Welcome, everyone. This is our ClickHouse admin workshop. It's August 21st. Super excited to have everybody here. This is our sort of one and only admin type training that we have, which almost seems counterintuitive to what we do here at ClickHouse. We're an open source project that has a cloud software as a service offering. But we also recognize the fact that people need to build POCs on their own before they could even use our cloud offering. For whatever reason, we see that quite a bit. And so what I want to do, is go through the steps. I want to show you how to set up a ClickHouse cluster. I want to show you what that means. And it all has to start at the beginning. So we are going to start very quickly. I'm going to run through what is ClickHouse. We're going to talk about some use cases of ClickHouse and so on. So quick intro, my name's Rich Repose. I'm in charge of training here at ClickHouse. I do have help today. I have Jay. You can just wave, Jay. He's on the support team. And so he's going to help me answer questions in the chat. Thanks, Jay. All right. And like I said, we're super short on time. By the end of this training, I hope to set up a 7-node ClickHouse cluster. That's 3 ClickHouse keeper nodes and a 2-shard, 2 replica cluster. And so for that to happen, we have to go pretty quick. Always have to start at the beginning, though. And, oh, you know what I want to do before I forget? I want to have this poll if I can find it. I do. I'm going to launch this very quick poll. Three questions. Just we're curious to know what you already know about ClickHouse, if you're new to it, or if you've been using it for a long time, or if you're somewhere in between. We'd love to know what your use case is, like why are you using ClickHouse? And then just out of curiosity, are you using something else? Like what else are you using now that you're either migrating from another technology or you're complementing another technology? We get a ton of people that use ClickHouse because their databases like Postgres and Oracle and those are just not fast enough, but they still need that transactional type database. So they sort of complement it with ClickHouse. And we get a lot of people just flat out moving from BigQuery or Elasticsearch or something like that. So awesome. So anyway, thanks for taking the poll. I'll just leave that open for another minute. What is ClickHouse? Well, ClickHouse is a database. It's actually short for Clickstream Data Warehouse. That was the very first use case of ClickHouse. It's an OLAP database. OLAP stands for Online Analytical Processing. And that is as opposed to an OLTP, which is an online transactional processing database. ClickHouse is for a different use case than transactional. We don't even have transactions in ClickHouse, at least not yet. It's all about analyzing data. It's answering questions, and not very specific questions like, you know, what's the value of one column in one row. We typically look at billions of rows at a time and compute aggregations and so on. And so often way faster, thousands of times faster than your traditional old school type database. You'll recognize these 4 use cases. They're on the survey. I'm going to end the poll just so I have it. And then I'm going to save the results if I can. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to move that over here. Sorry. Just don't want to lose that because it's good information. All right. So real-time analytics, a lot of people use this for observability, BI, machine learning. We usually get a few people for machine learning. Not a lot. Yeah, we got more this time. We got 2 people this time. If you're wondering what ClickHouse is useful for, like what is this whole OLAP thing? There's a couple things to notice about it. One is usually a massive amount of data, much more than your traditional transactional database can probably even handle. And 2, it's about running queries very quickly. So it's a lot of data coming in and a lot of data being processed. And just for example, like Cloudflare, you can imagine what they have in terms of data. They have all these network packets all over the place. They take all of them, run them through Kafka, and they get consumed. Now this picture is probably old. This has 36 shards. I suspect their clusters are bigger than that now. But 8 million requests per second, that's a lot of data if you think about it. And Postgres just couldn't handle that kind of volume. So, and they have, they have customers using it through their API, so they don't know how many queries they're going to get. So they have to be able to handle all kinds of processing. Didi was using Elasticsearch, just couldn't handle the volume. They're using Elasticsearch for their sort of hot data, putting the colder data into Hadoop. Now they put the hot data into ClickHouse. They get petabytes of data every day and just millions of queries every day. So pretty common use case. And we see a lot of people using it for a data warehouse. DeepL, for example, they use it as a central data warehouse. They're ingesting 500 million rows per day. That's actually a nominal number. It might sound like a lot of data, but that can be handled very nicely with ClickHouse. And so they're super happy with what they're using it for. And for what it's worth, if you go to our website, we have lots of great user stories if you're just curious about why people use ClickHouse. But for now, I want to go right into how it works. ClickHouse it's a column-oriented database. What does that mean? Well, I'll show you. I have a nice picture to show you. It's actually not that confusing of a system. It's just different than what you're used to. If you're used to Postgres or SQL Server or DB2 or MySQL or whatever, those are all row-oriented database systems. Now you insert rows into ClickHouse the exact same way you insert rows into all these SQL databases. It's the exact same insert command. Now your Postgres type databases are going to store those rows together. And it kind of makes sense. If I want to know what the price is of phone with the ID 102, it's all right here. It's $14.99. I can see that it's not locked or it's unlocked or whatever. And so, yeah, that's great for row-oriented databases. In a column-oriented database, you insert a bunch of rows. The first thing ClickHouse does is it takes all the values of each column and stores them in a separate file. So for example, we'll take all the IDs, which to me look like some kind of integer number. Hey, we'll just put those in a single file. Whether it's 4 or 4 million, I don't care how many values it is. And we'll put all these descriptions in a file, the strings. We'll put the ones and zeros of the unlocked column into a file. We'll actually call the file unlocked.bin, price.bin, id.bin. You'll see the file names on your file system in storage. What's the advantage of this? By the way, for what it's worth, if I want to know what the price is of phone number 102, well, now I kind of have to figure it out. I have to kind of reconstruct the row. I got to, figure out that it's the second row. And then I got to go find this other file and open up the price file and figure out that it's the second value in there. Look, asking me the price of one phone is not an analytical question. That is a very specific question that doesn't have anything to do with the larger data set. We don't ask, and don't sit there and think, oh, ClickHouse is going to be slow when I ask for the price of one phone. Look, nothing is slow in ClickHouse. I can assure you that right now. ClickHouse can tell you the price of phone number 102 as fast as any database on the planet. But my point is, that's not the type of questions we typically ask. What we typically ask is, what is the price of all my phones? Now, I only have 4 phones, but imagine if I had 4 million phones, or more realistically, 4 billion phones. I have 4 billion rows, and I want to find the average of those. Those are the kind of queries where ClickHouse it's screaming fast. What is the average price of 4 billion phones? Look, ClickHouse can do that in probably a second or two, depending on your system and how you have things set up. That is a very, very fast query to run in ClickHouse. And that's the payoff. Now, column-oriented, that's not the only reason that ClickHouse is fast, but it's certainly one of the reasons. And it's a SQL database. So can I take my SQL queries that I run on my old database and run it on ClickHouse? You can, but I'll be honest with you, you probably won't. You'll probably take those new queries. You'll probably take your queries and write new ones because they'll be so different. We're not just, you're not running the same queries that you ran on an old system unless you're migrating, I suppose. you're probably going to want to use some of these ClickHouse functions, which, there's over 1,500 functions in ClickHouse, which is pretty amazing. And so, yeah, you can write your old school SQL, but you can also take advantage of the power of ClickHouse when it comes time to actually analyze your data. And we'll talk a lot about table engines. Table engines, every table in ClickHouse has to have a table engine, which is a little bit different than probably what you're used to in other databases. And so we'll talk about that. Now, this is an admin course, and so I do want to focus on kind of the big picture of running, getting ClickHouse up and running. For what it's worth, and I'll show you this in the docs if I can find the page. Let me put this back. Over here in the docs, which I didn't open, right here. If you go to the start page, quick start, there's this lovely curl command, and I love this curl command. I'm gonna go over here and run it. I'm gonna make a new directory called August 21 because I'll delete this later. And I'm going to run that curl command. It's downloading. Notice it's downloading a file for Mac OS, which is what I'm running this on. If you ran that curl command on a Linux box, you would see it. It would download the Linux version. If you ran it on the Windows subsystem for Linux, it would download that version. The curl command downloads a single binary called ClickHouse, and I have version 24.9. That's the absolute latest version. It's not even September yet. So the 24 is the year, the 9 is the month, and yeah, I'm pretty sure it's still August 21st. I just created a folder called August 21st. So there's a very new version of ClickHouse. But look what happens. And by the way, for what it's worth, I just want to clarify. I'm not doing any kind of production thing here. I'm just downloading a super, super convenient binary. This one binary is ClickHouse Server, ClickHouse Client, ClickHouse Local, ClickHouse Benchmark, ClickHouse Compress, ClickHouse Keeper. It's a dozen different programs all in a single binary. And if I go to ClickHouse Server, and that will start up the server, notice what happens if I go back into that August folder. A bunch of new folders got created the very first time you run it. And then when I'm done playing around with this, all the folders are in the same directory here. I can just delete this August 21st folder and I'll be done. Like nothing will nothing else will be on my file system. So not the production way to do it, but a very quick way to show you ClickHouse. I'm going to run ClickHouse Client using the same binary, and I can run queries. I can show databases. Looks like there's 4 databases by default. If I show the tables in the default database, there aren't any. But if I show the tables in the system database, there's 94. 94 tables for free. What are these? Well, there is a database called System, and it has a bunch of read-only tables that tell you really everything you need to know about your cluster, not just your cluster, your whole ClickHouse instance. So for example, there's a table called settings. And if you want, you can look at all 1,093 settings in your in your ClickHouse instance. That's a lot of settings. And that's just the settings. There's actually one called server settings, which has a bunch more in it. So yeah, there's another 146 in there. So well over 1,000 settings. There's a lot of knobs and a lot of dials, lots of tunings in ClickHouse. So by the way, you don't change the settings in this table. This is a read-only informative table. It's just for your benefit to see what the values of all your settings are. So if you can't read that, well, you can change the format to something else. I'll change the format to vertical. And now you can see 146 server settings. Disable insertion and mutation is turned off. That's the default value. Config reload interval milliseconds is 2,000. Every 2 seconds, ClickHouse will reload a config file in the config folder. I'm actually going to show you that. So, Farnaz asked, is this a standalone version? It is a standalone version, but you can certainly connect to it using some kind of UI tool. And there is a tool you get for free. If I go to localhost 8 1, 2, 3, I'll get a little okay, which you probably can't even see. But if I do /play, I'll get a little UI. You know, I can select star from system.settings here, and you can see the results down here in this nice little UI. That's called the play UI. It's right in the URL. We call it the play UI. So that's all kind of fun. But play is a good word for this. I'm playing around with this UI. I'm playing around with this binary. I am not going to use this binary for any kind of production thing. It downloaded the absolute latest version. I mean, you're going to use some kind of real, you know, inserting or installation package like a Debian package or a Red Hat package manager or whatever. You're going to use Docker, Kubernetes. I don't know what you're going to use, but you're going to use something a little more typical. And that's what I'm going to show you in the later chapter. So, so hang on, we'll get to that. So, for what it's worth, I do want to point this out. So if I do install it using, let's say I use Ubuntu, the binary will be ClickHouse-server, and the client will be ClickHouse-client, and the keeper is ClickHouse-keeper. You don't get one binary when you install it using the package managers. You get different binaries for each tool. And so when I'm running it here on my laptop, and I did that pretty fast, but I did ClickHouse space client. But when I run this on my, on my Linux boxes in the cloud that I'm going to use, so it'll be good. All right. Yeah, good to know it works. People are saying it works with VS Code, works with JetBrains, Data Grip. That's great. Okay. Let me show you something. I have somewhere a file up in S3 here. I love these house prices. I'm going to show you something. This is going to be the link. I'm going to copy the link address. Over here in the docs, we have this section of data sets. The example data sets are really nice. Like every single one of these pages is like a little tutorial on using ClickHouse. The UK property prices data set, I use it a lot in the trainings because it's a very universal thing. I think the average person can understand what it means to buy and sell a house or a piece of property. And so every piece of property has a price and the date it was sold and the address and so on. And the United Kingdom very nicely provides this data. Yeah, and I have it in a Parquet file. You can see I have it. I just copied the link to that Parquet file up here in S3. What I love about ClickHouse is you can use table functions to query files up in the cloud or wherever. So for example, and the S3 table function treats it like a table. So for example, I can describe that table. I can select star using the S3 table. Whoops. Oh, accidentally highlighted that. Just grab the whole thing. Copy. I better just grab 100 rows or something. And now I can grab 100 rows from this Parquet file. Is this going to be fast? I don't know. That took, how long did that take? Well, it's still thinking. Well, I hope I put a limit on there. Didn't I put a limit on there? I did. It's still thinking, but I mean, it's pretty fast. I could absolutely run these queries. These are very ad hoc type queries. I'm not going to do this all day though. At some point in time, I'm going to put the data into ClickHouse. So the S3 table function is amazing, but at some point in time, I got to store the data in ClickHouse. This doesn't store the data at all in ClickHouse. It just queries the data where it sits in the cloud. So yeah, I'm not going to wait 3 seconds to query 100 rows, but you can see what the data looks like. What I am going to do is a very lazy thing. You want that link? Oh yeah, let me give you that link before I lose it. I'll just put the whole thing there. I lost it. Shoot. I keep highlighting this stuff. I'll just give you this command. And there's a bunch more files up there. You can use a wildcard if you want to grab. Instead of _0, you can put an asterisk and grab a bunch of files. I'm about to do that, by the way. I'm about to grab all of them. Watch this command. I'm going to do something pretty cool. I'm going to create a table called UK price paid. I haven't mentioned the merge tree table engine yet. I just kind of casually mentioned that every table has to have an engine. And I'm going to use merge tree, whatever that is. Primary key is going to be postcode 1 and postcode 2. Just that's how it was on the website. So that's what I did here. And I'm going to select every single row from S3, every single file that starts with house underscore in this S3 bucket. I'm not going to use nullable columns like it did up before. And I don't know how long this is going to take because I don't know how many files or how many rows this is. I think it's millions of rows. It's usually about 27, 28 million rows. Notice I'm already up to 5 million rows. I don't even know where this file is. Oh, yeah, I do. It's in the EU West. So I'm in the United States. This is in the Western Europe. This isn't bad. I'm not going to complain. I got 14 million rows inserted while I'm just sitting here talking. That's kind of cool. What does the setting do? I do not want my columns to be nullable, and that's a conversation for another class. And I talk about nullable columns a lot in some of my other trainings. I just don't want nullable is fine, but it costs something, and I don't want to pay that cost. I don't care if my columns are null or not in this particular data set, so I'm just going to not do it. I'm going to select count from UK price paid, and I'm going to get 27.73 million rows. That's pretty cool. So now if I select 100 rows, oops, the data is here in my, it's on my machine now. That took 19 milliseconds to get 100 rows. You can't really, let me change the format again. You can't really see it. Format vertical, 220,000. This is the United Kingdom. The currency is pounds on whatever date. Oh, my date didn't work. I might have screwed up the date somewhere. Oh, I saved it down here. Oh, I have a new column called sell date. On February 8th of 2018 in Cambridge, this house sold for 281,500 pounds. That's it. That's a real transaction in the real world. So, okay. So what else was I going to show you? Well, let me run a query that's halfway interesting. Let me show you a couple things. Let me show you how much data this used, how much space it took up. I have this query. There's a table in the system database called tables. Remember the system database. It's super handy. Every table in your system, in your entire ClickHouse instance, every table will be in system.tables. The name of my table is UK price paid, and there's a bunch of details in there. I just grabbed the size that it's taking, the storage, and how much it was uncompressed. It's that data that I downloaded was 2.64 gigabytes, but it only took 400 megabytes to store it. Why? Look, where's my slide? Let me go back to this picture. I can't emphasize this enough. This column storage is amazing. Column storage. All the data's the same. These are a bunch of numbers. These are a bunch of numbers. These are a bunch of numbers. I don't know how you compress strings. You really can't compress strings very well unless there's some pattern to them. But if you gave me a 27 million integers and just put them in a file with nothing else, no metadata, no pointers, no garbage, just 32-bit integers in a file, that would compress very, very nicely. If you gave me a bunch of 64-bit floating point numbers and put them in a file with nothing else, I could compress and decompress those files very, very nicely. The compression you get with ClickHouse is usually 80%. What does that mean? That's just a ballpark figure. Oh, I got it right there. Compression's over 80%. That's true almost all the time. So ClickHouse compresses the data very well. I can run that query. I have it over here. Let's see what it does. Super fast. It took 132 milliseconds to go. I only have 27 million rows. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, 27 million rows, that's a lot of data. In ClickHouse, that's nothing. 132 milliseconds. It figured out it took my 27 million rows, figured out each row as a year. So I converted the sell date to year, grouped it by year, and figured out the average price of homes. The bar function was just for fun. so you could see it visually. But in 1995, the average price of homes in the UK was 67,000 pounds. And last year, no, 2 years ago, it was 378,000 pounds. There you go. Like I said, real world data. You can see the prices shooting up there as time goes on. So, hey, I'm not going to complain about 132 milliseconds. I got one more query just for fun, so I might as well do it. This is town and district. These are the top 25 properties that had at least 100 transactions, or cities. Top 25 cities, the most expensive ones. London, City of London is the most expensive. City of Westminster is number 2. Kensington and Chelsea. I love it. Okay. So how long did that take? That took a whopping 244 milliseconds. So I've got some data. Let me show you something. This is going to be more interesting. I'm going to go into the data folder. Inside the data folder, I see default and system. Hey, what do you think those are? You should know what those are. We just went through the databases. Those are those folder names match the databases that I have, and I didn't create a database. I put my table into default. Look how simple and non-convoluted ClickHouse is. It's not over-engineered at all. There's a folder inside default called UK price paid. That shouldn't surprise you at all that that's the name of my table. And if I had 100 tables, I'd have 100 folders in there. And inside this folder are a bunch of subfolders. Well, I'm going to talk about those in a minute. Those are called parts. Let me go into one of them. Let me go into this part right here. And inside that folder, let me just do a ls. I can see street.bin. Well, that's that column. Price.bin, that's a column. Postcode1.bin, that's another column. Postcode2.bin. I can just, like I said, see the files in there. You can actually, there's actually a file in here called count.txt, which tells you how many rows. This particular part has 1 million rows. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1 million, just over 1 million rows. I can see the columns. There's the columns of this table right there, just for fun. But the actual data is in those bin files.